She thought it was over. That was her first mistake. 3 weeks after the restaurant. 3 weeks after Kevin Porter had stood in the middle of the finest dining room in Gangnam and decided that a pregnant black woman and the man beside her were acceptable targets for the specific cruelty of someone who had never once in his life been made to understand consequences. 3 weeks after Kang Jin-woo had said nothing, had done nothing visible, had simply taken her hand, settled the bill, and walked her out of that restaurant with the specific controlled quietness of a man who had already made every decision that needed making and was simply waiting for the appropriate moment to execute them. 3 weeks during which Kevin Porter's world had begun, quietly and completely, and without any single dramatic moment that could be pointed to come apart. His visa application had been denied. His father's meeting with the Lotte Group board had been cancelled without explanation. 3 of Marcus Thorne's Korean business partners had, within the same 10-day window, found reasons to dissolve their arrangements. Nobody could prove anything. Nobody needed to. Zara had watched it happen from the specific distance of a woman who had decided not to ask too many questions about how certain things worked in her husband's world. She trusted him. She understood, in the way you understood weather, not fully, not technically, but with the complete practical intelligence of someone who had learned to read the sky, what Kang Jin-woo was capable of when something he loved was threatened. She had thought it was over. She had thought he was done. She had not known about the photograph. Stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is the part of this story that changes everything. Part 1 was about what Jin-woo did to the people who humiliated his wife in public. Part 2 is about what happens when someone decides that was not a warning, that it was an invitation. And I promise you, what Kang Jin-woo does when someone mistakes his silence for weakness is a story you are not remotely prepared for. Subscribe right now if you have not already and turn on that notification bell. This channel is where love is protection and silence is the most dangerous language. Now let's go. The photograph appeared on a Friday morning. Not in a newspaper. Not on a public platform. In the private encrypted messaging channel that approximately 40 people in Seoul had access to. The specific 40 people whose professional lives intersected with the Kang organization in ways that were never discussed in public and never committed to traceable communication. The photograph showed Zara leaving the hospital after her 32-week appointment. Alone. Because Jin-woo had been detained by a meeting that ran long and had sent his car and his most trusted driver and had called her 3 times during the appointment to check on everything and had been told she was fine and had believed it. She was alone in the photograph. Visibly pregnant. Hand on her rounded belly the way she always held it now, the unconscious protective gesture she had developed sometime around week 24 and could not stop even when she was aware of doing it. She was alone. And someone had photographed her. And sent it to 40 people who understood exactly what the photograph meant. Not a threat stated. A threat implied. The specific language of people who operated in spaces where implications carried more weight than declarations, because declarations could be used as evidence and implications could not. Jin-woo received it at 7:43 a.m. He was at his desk. He read the message. He looked at the photograph for exactly 4 seconds. Then he put his phone face down on the desk. His head of security, a compact Korean man named Choi who had been with the organization for 11 years and had learned to read Jin-woo's silences the way a sailor read currents, was in the room. He watched Jin-woo put the phone down. He understood immediately that the temperature in the room had changed. Not dramatically. Not visibly to anyone who did not know how to look. But the specific quality of Jin-woo's stillness had shifted from the controlled professional stillness of a man conducting his morning to the absolute predatory stillness of something that had locked onto a target and was not going to release it. "Where is she?" Jin-woo said. "Home, sir." The driver confirmed she arrived 40 minutes ago. 2 additional cars outside the building. Rotating. Starting now. "Yes, sir. I want to know who took the photograph within 4 hours. "Yes, sir." "And Choi?" "Sir." No one tells her about the photograph. A pause. "Sir, with respect. She is 32 weeks pregnant," Jin-woo said. His voice was the voice he used for things that had been decided. Completely even. Completely final. She is not going to spend the next 8 weeks afraid in her own home. Find me who took the photograph. Then I will decide what she needs to know and when. Choi nodded once. He left. Jin-woo sat alone in his office for 11 minutes. Then he picked up his phone and called Zara. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." Her voice was warm and slightly sleepy in the way it was every morning after 9, the specific drowsy warmth of a woman in the final stretch of pregnancy whose body had decided that sleep was a currency worth spending freely. "Where are you?" "Office." "How are you feeling?" "Large," she said. "And hungry. The baby wants dumplings." "I'll have them sent." "Kang Jin-woo, you cannot send dumplings at 8 a.m. "Why not?" "Because." A pause. He could hear her thinking about it. "Actually, I have no argument. Send the dumplings." The corner of his mouth moved. "Are you comfortable?" he said. "At the apartment." "Yes." "Why?" "I may be late this evening. I want you to stay in." "I was planning to walk in the park." "Tomorrow," he said. "The weather will be better tomorrow." A silence. She knew him well enough to hear what was in that silence. She had been married to this man for 2 years. She had spent those 2 years learning the specific architecture of his communication, what he said and what he did not say, and the very precise information contained in the space between the two. "Jin-woo," she said. "Yes." "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfectly fine," he said. "Stay in today. I'll be home for dinner." Another silence. "Okay," she said. Because she trusted him. Because she had chosen, with full awareness of who he was and what his world contained, to trust him. "Dinner better be worth the house arrest." "It will be," he said. "I want galbi." "You'll have galbi." "And the dumplings are still happening." "The dumplings are already ordered." She laughed. He held the phone for a moment after they said goodbye, listening to the dial tone, and thought about a photograph of his pregnant wife walking alone and the specific category of decision that had just been made about what would happen to whoever took it. The 4 hours he had given Choi became 3. The photograph had been taken by a man named Song Hyun, who was employed as a junior associate in the acquisitions division of the Kang organization's legitimate real estate arm. 26 years old. 2 years with the company. Performance reviews that were adequate without being notable. The specific profile of someone who had been overlooked long enough to develop a grievance about it. Song Hyun had not taken the photograph for himself. He had taken it for a woman named Park Soo-yeon. This was the piece that changed the temperature of the room a second time when Choi delivered it. Because Park Soo-yeon was not a random actor. She was not connected to Kevin Porter or Marcus Thorne. She was connected to Park Min-suk, the internal threat from Part 1, the man Jin-woo had handled in the weeks after the restaurant, and she was, specifically, Park Min-suk's younger sister, who had watched her brother's position inside the organization dissolve, who had watched the careful infrastructure he had built over 8 years disappear, who had decided that the woman who had caused it, the pregnant outsider, the black woman Jin-woo had brought into his world and his home and his bed, was the correct target for what she was feeling. She was wrong about that. She was wrong about several things. But most significantly, she was wrong about what Kang Jin-woo's silence after the restaurant had meant. She had interpreted it as softness, as the specific vulnerability of a man distracted by domesticity. She had decided that a man who had allowed an insult to his wife to pass without visible response was a man who could be pushed further. Jin-woo received Choi's report. He read it completely. He sat with it for exactly 60 seconds. Then he said, "Who else received the photograph?" "We've confirmed 38 of the 40 recipients. Of those, 31 have been with us long enough to understand what receiving it required of them. The other 7 are newer." The 7. "4 have already replied to Choi's message confirming they deleted it and reported the source. 2 have not responded. 1 Choi paused, forwarded it. Jin-woo looked at him. "To whom?" "A journalist. Entertainment section. Male business. She has a specific interest in the intersection of chaebol families and her name." Choi gave it. Jin-woo wrote it down. "The journalist," he said, "receives a legal notice from our counsel by the end of today. No publication. No communication about the photograph or its subject. If she has already sent it anywhere, it gets pulled. Completely." And Song Hyun. Song Hyun's employment ends this morning, with the full documentation of his conduct attached to the termination record. I want it filed in a way that follows him. And Park Soo-yeon. The longest pause. Park Soo-yeon, Jin-woo said, made a decision about my wife. About my child. She needs to understand what that decision cost her. He was very still. But she's going to understand it the way her brother understood his mistakes. Not through anything that can be connected to me. Through the natural consequences of having burned every bridge she had left. Choi nodded. He understood. He went to make it happen. Zara found out about the photograph on a Sunday. Not from Jin-woo. From his mother. This was unexpected for two reasons. The first was that Kim Hae-won, Jin-woo's mother, a composed, elegant Korean woman in her early 60s who had survived 30 years of marriage to the previous head of the Kang organization and had emerged from it with the specific quality of grace that came from enduring considerable difficulty with your dignity intact, did not typically involve herself in operational matters. The second was that she had, up until this point in Zara's marriage, maintained a careful and correct and not entirely warm relationship with her daughter-in-law. Not hostile. Not cruel. The specific cautious distance of a woman who had watched her son make a significant personal decision and had not yet decided what she thought about it. She arrived at the apartment on Sunday morning unannounced. This had never happened before. Zara opened the door and found her mother-in-law standing in the corridor in a dark coat with a covered dish in her hands and an expression that Zara had never seen on her face before. Something that was very close to guilt. "May I come in?" Hae-won said. Zara stepped back. Hae-won came in and set the dish on the kitchen counter and looked at Zara's belly, 33 weeks now, large and present and entirely impossible to ignore, and something moved across her face. "Sit down," she said. "I need to tell you something." Zara sat. Hae-won sat across from her. And she told her about the photograph. She told her because she had been one of the 40 recipients. Because she had been in the room, in a manner of speaking, for the entire sequence from the photograph's arrival to Jin-woo's response to the current state of Song Hyun and Park Soo-yeon and the journalist. And she had watched her son manage it with the complete controlled precision she had watched him apply to everything in his life. And she had decided, with the specific moral clarity of a woman who had spent 30 years watching men in this world make decisions about what women needed to know and when, that Zara deserved to know it. "He was protecting you," Hae-won said. "From fear. From the specific kind of fear that would have followed you through the rest of the pregnancy." "I know that," Zara said. "But you're not afraid now." "No," Zara said. "I'm not afraid." She held her mother-in-law's gaze. "I'm his wife, not his patient. And those are two different things." A silence. Hae-won looked at her. For the first time in 2 years of careful, correct distance, she looked at her daughter-in-law completely. Not at her pregnancy. Not at her foreignness. Not at the specific category of woman her son had chosen and what that choice had required the family to adjust to. At Zara. "Yes," Hae-won said quietly. "They are." Jin-woo came home that evening to find his mother and his wife sitting at the kitchen table eating the dish Hae-won had brought, talking in the specific comfortable way of two women who had decided, without announcing it, to stop being careful with each other. He stood in the doorway for a moment. He looked at the scene. He understood what had happened. He went to the kitchen and poured himself tea and sat down at the table and waited. Zara looked at him. "You should have told me," she said. "Yes," he said. "I am not fragile. I know. You know that I know what your world is. You know that I chose it with full awareness. You know that protecting me from information is not the same as protecting me." "Yes," he said. "I know all of those things." "Then why?" He held her gaze. "Because I looked at that photograph," he said, "and saw you walking alone and someone watching you. And the only thing I wanted, the only thing, was for that image to not be in your head. For you to not spend 1 hour lying awake in this apartment imagining it." The kitchen was quiet. His mother had found something extremely interesting to look at outside the window. "Jin-woo," Zara said. "Yes. I love you," she said. "And the next time you decide what I need to know and when, I am going to be considerably less composed about it than I am right now." The corner of his mouth. "Understood," he said. "I mean it. I know you do." "Hae-won told me everything," she said. Song-hyun. Park Soo-yeon. The journalist. All of it. He looked at his mother. His mother continued to find the window very interesting. Everything has been handled, he said. I know it has, Zara said. That is not the issue. The issue is that I found out from your mother. Yes, he said. That is a fair issue. Tell me one thing, she said. Yes. Park Soo-yeon, she said. Is she going to come back? He held her gaze. No, he said. She held his gaze for a long moment. She believed him. If you are watching this and your heart is doing something you were not expecting, good. That means the story is working. Hit that like button right now, because this is the scene that this entire part was building toward. Subscribe if you are not already here. And drop a comment, whose side are you on? Did Jin-woo make the right call protecting Zara from the photograph, or did he cross a line? Tell me, because the comments on this one are going to be very interesting. Now stay with me, because what comes next is the part nobody sees coming. Park Soo-yeon had made 3 mistakes. The first was the photograph. The second was the journalist, which had failed, but the attempt itself had revealed something about her willingness to escalate that changed the calculation. The third mistake she made on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. in a coffee shop in Itaewon, where she met with a man named Lee Dae-ho, who had presented himself to her 3 weeks ago as someone with shared interests in the disruption of Kang Jin-woo's domestic arrangements. He was not that. He was Choi's man. He had been sitting across from Park Soo-yeon for 3 weeks, letting her talk, noting everything she said and everything she planned and every contact she had reached out to and every piece of information she thought she had. The meeting at the coffee shop in Itaewon was the meeting where Park Soo-yeon, who had spent 3 weeks believing she was building toward something, finally disclosed the full scope of what she was planning. She was not building toward disruption. She was building toward something considerably more direct. The information reached Jin-woo at 2:47 p.m. He read it. He sat with it for 3 seconds. This was shorter than usual. She's not acting alone, he said. No, sir, Choi said. The initial funding for Song-hyun's cooperation came from an external source, not Soo-yeon's own resources. Someone connected her to Song-hyun and provided the infrastructure. Who? We are 48 hours from a name. You have 24, Jin-woo said. He stood. He went home. He did not tell Zara this part, because this part was not about protecting her from fear. This part was about something that was still in motion, and he had learned, or was in the process of learning, because Zara was an ongoing education in what he owed her, to tell her things when they were complete rather than when they were active, which was a distinction he believed she would accept when he explained it, and which he planned to explain when this was done. He sat with her that evening on the couch while she fell asleep against his shoulder at 9 p.m. the way she had been doing since week 28, the specific immediate heavy sleep of a body working very hard at building something, and he did not move for 2 hours. He sat in the dark apartment with the Seoul night outside the windows and his sleeping pregnant wife against his shoulder and his hand resting on the curved warmth of her belly, and he thought about the name he was going to have in 24 hours and what would happen after. The baby moved. He felt it under his hand. The specific small assertive movement he had come to know over the past months, not random, not accidental, deliberate in the way that even now, 8 weeks before she arrived in the world, their daughter had the specific quality of deliberateness that he recognized as entirely his and entirely Zara's simultaneously. He looked down at Zara's sleeping face. At the woman who had walked into his world and refused, systematically and without drama, to be made smaller by it. At the child who was coming, who would be born into this specific combination of his history and her grace, and would have to navigate both. He thought about Kevin Porter at the restaurant 3 months ago. He thought about Park Soo-yeon and Song-hyun and the journalist and the photograph. He thought about the name he was going to have in 24 hours. He would handle it. He would handle all of it. And when it was done, completely done, every thread cut, every connection severed, every person who had decided that his family was a target permanently disabused of that specific misunderstanding, he would sit in this apartment and watch his daughter arrive in the world, and Zara would never spend a single hour afraid in her own home. That was the promise he had made. Not out loud. Not in words. In the specific language he spoke best. Action. Silence. Completion. The name arrived in 18 hours. Not 24. 18. The external source who had funded Song Hyun and connected him to Park Soo-yeon and provided the infrastructure for the photograph and the journalist contact was a man named Victor Hale. American. 43. A business attorney who had represented Marcus Thorne in 3 Korean transactions over the previous 5 years. Who had been in the country when the restaurant incident occurred. Who had watched Marcus Thorne's Korean business network dismantle itself in the weeks after and had made a specific professional calculation. He had decided that destabilizing Kang Jin-woo's personal life was leverage. That a man distracted by threats to his pregnant wife was a man who could be managed. That the restaurant incident had revealed a vulnerability, not in Jin-woo, but in the woman beside him, that could be exploited. He had found Park Soo-yeon through a contact in the organization who had since been identified and removed. He had provided her with Song Hyun's name and the specific access credentials that had allowed Song Hyun to get close enough to Zara's schedule to know when she would be leaving the hospital alone. He was currently in a serviced apartment in Mapo preparing for a flight to New York on Thursday. Jin-woo received this information on Wednesday morning. He read it. He was very still for a long time. Then he made 2 calls. The first was to his legal team. The second was to a man in New York whose name did not appear in any public record connected to Jin-woo and whose professional relationship with the Kang organization was not something Jin-woo discussed. The calls took 11 minutes combined. Then Jin-woo went back to his desk and continued his morning. Victor Hale did not get on the Thursday flight. This was because on Wednesday evening Victor Hale received a visit at his serviced apartment in Mapo from 2 representatives of a law firm whose name he did not recognize who presented him with a document that outlined, in precise and complete legal language, the full scope of what Jin-woo's team had assembled about his activities over the previous 3 weeks. The document was thorough. It covered Song Hyun's cooperation and its funding, the journalist contact, the infrastructure Victor had provided, the specific connection to Marcus Thorne's business interests that gave the entire sequence a coherent motive that would be extremely straightforward to present to the appropriate Korean and American legal authorities. The document also outlined, in an appendix, what would happen if Victor Hale chose not to cooperate with the requests contained in the main body. The requests were specific. A full written account of his activities, signed and notarized. A complete list of every person he had communicated with about Kang Jin-woo or his family in the previous 6 months. The immediate cessation of all activity connected to the Kang organization or any of its members. And a permanent departure from South Korea within 48 hours with a document signed and witnessed confirming he would not return. Victor Hale was a lawyer. He read the document carefully. He read the appendix. He understood what he was reading. He signed everything. He was on a flight Thursday morning. Not the one he had planned. An earlier one. Jin-woo told Zara on Thursday evening. All of it. Not the parts he had decided she needed to know. Everything. Victor Hale. The connection to Marcus Thorne. Song Hyun's funded cooperation. Park Soo-yeon and what she had been building toward in the coffee shop in Itaewon. The Lee Dae-ho operation. The document. The flight. He told her at the kitchen table after dinner while she sat across from him with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea and her belly resting against the table edge and her large dark eyes watching his face with the focused complete attention. She gave everything that mattered. He did not manage the information. He did not curate it. He told her. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Victor Hale was connected to Marcus Thorne, she said. Yes. Which means the restaurant was not random, she said. Kevin Porter being in that specific restaurant on that specific evening was not random, Jin-woo confirmed. We believe it was engineered. Kevin Porter is not sophisticated enough to have identified the restaurant and the evening independently. Someone with knowledge of our routine told him where we would be. She absorbed this. Park Min-suk, she said. Or someone connected to him, he said. The restaurant incident and the photograph were parts of the same sequence. Different phases. The restaurant was designed to provoke a public response from me that could be used. When I didn't provide one, they moved to the photograph. When that was contained, Victor Hale escalated. They wanted you to react publicly, she said. Yes. And you didn't. No. And they misread the silence. Yes, he said. They did. She held her tea. She looked at him. Jin-woo, she said. Yes. Is it done? He held her gaze. Yes, he said. She breathed. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. Then tell me something, she said. Anything. The night of the restaurant, she said. When Kevin Porter said what he said. When the staff did nothing and the other diners looked away. You sat there, and you said nothing, and your face showed nothing, and I could not read you at all. He held her gaze. What were you thinking, she said. He was quiet for a moment. I was thinking, he said carefully, about what he had just decided. About what the decision to say those things to you in a room full of people meant he believed about the world. About what he believed about you. About what he believed about me. And I was thinking, he said, that the most important thing I could do in that moment was make sure you didn't see what I was feeling. Because what I was feeling was not something a pregnant woman should have to manage. She looked at him. And after, she said. In the weeks after. When everything was happening to his world. What were you thinking then? He held her gaze for a long moment. I was thinking about our daughter, he said. About the world she is coming into. About what I wanted that world to understand about the cost of touching what is mine. He paused. And I was thinking about you. About the specific quality of dignity you maintained in that restaurant. About the way you held your head. About the fact that you did not cry until we were in the car and you thought I wasn't watching. She was very still. You saw that, she said. I see everything, he said quietly. That is the part of this that I need you to understand. I see everything. And everything I see matters to me. Everything. The kitchen was quiet around them. Seoul moved outside the windows. The baby moved. Zara looked down at her belly for a moment, then up at him. She's going to have your eyes, she said. She's going to have your stubbornness, he said. She laughed. It was the specific laugh he had been protecting for months. The real one. Large and warm and entirely her. He watched it cross her face. He thought about Kevin Porter, who was somewhere in a world that was considerably smaller than the one he had walked into that restaurant with, learning what it cost to think that Zara Kang was a target rather than the most protected person in Seoul. He thought about Park Soo-yeon. About Victor Hale. About Marcus Thorne, whose Korean ambitions were now a careful and permanent memory. He thought about silence. About how it was not the absence of response. It was the most complete form of it. He reached across the table and took her hand properly this time. She let him. 6 weeks later their daughter arrived. Jin-woo was there for all of it. He stood beside the hospital bed for 9 hours, and he did not check his phone once, and he held Zara's hand through the parts that required her to be held, and he said very little, because this was not a moment that required words from him, and he understood. With the specific intelligence that was his greatest asset, what each moment required. When their daughter arrived, she was small and furious and entirely present in the way she had been for months through Zara's belly, assertive and deliberate, and already somehow both of them simultaneously. The nurse placed her in Jin-woo's arms. He looked at her. She looked back at him with the dark eyes that were already, impossibly, already his. He did not say anything for a long time. Zara watched his face. She had spent 2 years learning to read the specific architecture of this man's expressions. The controlled professional surface. The layered interior. The very precise information contained in the space between what he showed and what he felt. She watched his face hold their daughter. She had never seen it like this. She had never seen him like this. Unguarded in a way that had nothing to do with strategy. Open in a way that was not calculated. Simply and completely present in the specific way of someone for whom the entire world had just rearranged itself around a single new thing and was still catching up. Jin-woo, she said. He looked up. His eyes were wet. He did not try to manage that. She felt something in her chest that was enormous and warm and entirely beyond her ability to name. Hello, he said to their daughter. Very quietly. Just for her. I've been waiting for you. Kevin Porter returned to America permanently in October. Marcus Thorne's Korean business interests never recovered. He sent one email to a contact in Seoul asking about the possibility of re-entering the market. The contact did not respond. Victor Hale resigned from his firm in November. The specific circumstances were not publicly stated. Park Soo-yeon moved to Busan. She did not re-enter Seoul in the period covered by the story. Song Hyun's termination record followed him in the specific way Jin-woo had requested. He found this out the hard way. The journalist from Mail Business was assigned to a different beat. She had received the legal notice and had understood it completely. Nobody connected any of these outcomes to Kang Jin-woo. Nobody needed to. On a Sunday afternoon 4 months after their daughter was born, Zara stood in the kitchen of their apartment making jollof rice. The specific Nigerian pepper soup smell that had become a permanent feature of their home over the previous year. Their daughter was in the living room in the specific portable nest Jin-woo had researched with the focused obsessive attention he brought to anything connected to her safety, sleeping the deep heavy sleep of someone who had eaten and was satisfied with the world. Jin-woo came through the door at 3 p.m. He had been at the office since 7. He walked directly to the kitchen. He stood in the doorway. He looked at the scene, Zara at the stove, the smell of jollof, their daughter's small sounds from the living room, with the expression she had been cataloging for 2 years and had finally, in the last 4 months, found the name for. Home. He was looking at his home. "You're early," she said without turning around. "I rescheduled," he said. "The Busan meeting?" "Thursday." She turned. She looked at him in the doorway in his dark suit with his tie slightly loosened in the specific way it loosened by 3 p.m. on days when things had required his full concentrated attention and he had given it. She looked at the man who had sat across a restaurant table 3 months before their daughter was born and decided, in complete silence, that everything that needed to be dismantled would be dismantled. "Galbi," she said. "Whatever you're making," he said. "I'm making jollof." "Then jollof." She turned back to the stove. He came into the kitchen and stood beside her and looked at what she was making with the focused attention he gave everything, and asked 2 questions about the process because he had been asking questions about her cooking for a year and a half and had progressed from polite interest to genuine knowledge in the specific way he progressed at everything. From the living room their daughter made a sound. Both of them turned. The sound resolved into the small self-contained commentary she made when she was awake and satisfied and not yet requiring anything from anyone. The specific early language of a person who had opinions and was already developing the vocabulary for them. Jin-woo was already moving toward the living room. Zara watched him go. She turned the heat down on the jollof. She stood in her kitchen in Seoul on a Sunday afternoon and listened to the sound of Kang Jin-woo talking to their daughter in the specific low careful voice he used only with her, mixing Korean and English the way he mixed everything in his life, deliberately, with complete intention, and felt something she did not have a word for in any of her languages. She tried anyway. Whole, she thought. This is what whole feels like. And that is where we leave them. Zara and Kang Jin-woo and the daughter who arrived in a world where her father had already made it clear, without a single public word, without a single traceable action, with only the specific devastating silence of a man who understood that consequences did not require announcement, what the cost was of touching his family. Kevin Porter learned it. Marcus Thorne learned it. Victor Hale learned it. Park Soo-yeon learned it. And their daughter will grow up in a world where nobody who understands anything needs to learn it twice. Part 3 is coming. And what faces the Kang family in the next chapter is something that comes not from the outside, but from within, something older than Kevin Porter and deeper than one restaurant incident. And it is going to test everything that Zara and Jin-woo have built in ways that silence alone will not be enough to answer. Subscribe right now and hit that notification bell because part 3 is going to be the biggest chapter in this story yet. Hit the like button if this part delivered everything you needed. Share it with someone who needs to see what real protection looks like. And drop a comment below. What was your moment in part 2? Was it the photograph? The kitchen conversation? The hospital? The jollof on a Sunday? Tell me everything. I read every single comment and I will see you in part 3.